Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I am Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. 2024 is the year of elections, and this month the Russian presidential elections are slated to happen. While there is little doubt as to who the next Russian president will be, there's still a lot to unpack about the Russian polity. And today we are going to do just that with Dr. Rajan Kumar. Dr. Rajan Kumar teaches foreign policy at the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has written extensively on Russia's politics and has co-authored the book Re-Emerging Russia: Structures, Institutions and Processes. Welcome to IGPP Expert Talk, sir.
Thank you, Heena, for having me here.
So the Russian presidential elections are slated to happen from 15th March to 17th March. However, the fact that elections are happening, presidential elections are happening in Russia, does not seem to invoke much excitement in media or amongst political analysts. Why is that the scenario? Is it because the world perceives and we all agree that Russia is under dictatorial rule?
Thank you for having me here, and this is a very important question. And 2024 is the year of election. President Biden, the American presidential election is there. India is going to have election in May, and this month, March itself, you'll have election in Russia. The only difference is that in other places there are chances of change, but in the case of Russia, there is no chance of change. As far as the presidential election in Russia is concerned, so it's almost certain that President Putin will remain in power as the president, and the way he controls the Russian politics, they are multi-party system in the sense there are multiple parties, at least in the parliament, and you have liberal parties, you have Communist Party, they do have vote bank, but United Russia Party is the most important party, and that has the blessing of President Putin. So because of that, and also there are several reasons why Putin is very strong there in Russia. Number one, because he controls most of the institutions, whether it's defense or security or bureaucracy or parliament, as I said, and also media. So there is nothing left for people who are in opposition parties. So because of that, I think the space for political opposition is very less in Russia. And after Russia-Ukraine war, the political space has shrunk further. So the regime has become definitely repressive in terms of political and civic liberties of the people. That space has squeezed further after Russia-Ukraine war. So coming up Putin is a kind of inevitability that you'll see this month. His legitimacy, I'll say, let me tell you that he's also a very popular leader today. He's popular because of two reasons. First, because of the economy. Russian economy is doing well despite war, despite sanctions. And the second is political stability. And in Russia, many people believe that what happened to Soviet Union, the same thing might happen to Russia as well. And especially after the NATO intervention in Ukraine, people started fearing that they need a very strong leader. So Putin is also a very popular leader. But you also remain popular partly because you do not allow the space for opposition party or the leader to emerge. And recently, there was a case of Navalny who was in prison in Siberia, and he died under very mysterious circumstances. And he was considered, from the Western perspective, I'm saying that he was considered an important critique of Kremlin. He was not exactly an opposition leader in the sense that he was not a leader of any political party. But he was the most important political critique of Kremlin and Putin. But he died, and earlier Nemtsov in 2015, and before that other leaders have also died under very mysterious circumstances. Because of that, Putin controls Russia today. He also has legitimacy, and Russia is not doing bad in Russia-Ukraine war. So people think this is not the time for change also. And in any way, political change in Russia is very slow. If you see the history, be it Stalin, be it Khrushchev for a certain time, but again the Brezhnev, etc. So there is a tradition of ruling for a very long time. So that also plays some role. But Putin, because of these reasons I told you, will come to power again.
Ideologies function as a way of providing legitimacy to rule everywhere, right? So, what is the stated or unstated ideology of the present and future Russian president, Mr. Vladimir Putin?
Thank you for asking me this very intelligent question, not normally asked in the media. But let me tell you that this is not the communist country. Russia today has nothing to do with communism at all. It's a capitalist country. But what is the ideology through which the ruling party comes to power, or retains the power, or retains the legitimacy? So Russian nationalism is based on three things. One is orthodoxy. Second is Christianity. Orthodoxy means Orthodox Christianity. Autocracy and this anti-Western sentiment. When I say orthodoxy, Orthodox Christianity, the Russian Christians are different from Protestant or Catholic. They are identified with what is known as Orthodox Christianity, which is closer to Greece but different from Rome, different from France and UK. So that Orthodox Christianity is the religious kind of glue factor for Russian nationalism. They also identify with Slavic nationalism, the Slavic identity, ethnic identity. So that's one part of it. This autocracy has the tradition in Russia in the sense that right since the Tsarist period, also partly in the Soviet period, and then you see in the form of Putin today that it's a very autocratic, authoritarian kind of government. So that is also considered to be one of the important features of so-called Russian ideology. And nationalism, because of these two, combination of these two, Russian nationalism is very, very strong. But Russian nationalism invariably is linked to anti-Western sentiment. So earlier it was Cold War period. Before that, even during the Tsarist period, Russia was considered the backwater in terms of reforms. The reforms which were taking place, political reforms in France, England, etc., Russia did not allow that to happen. Russian reform was very slow. So that eventually it continues in some form. And in the Soviet period, Cold War was there. So again, anti-Western sentiment was there. For a very brief period, 1990s, Yeltsin tried to get closer to the Western countries, and IMF, World Bank, etc. But when Putin came to power, and especially after 2007, Putin pursued a completely different trajectory in terms of his foreign policy, and he turned very anti-Western. So it started with the intervention in Georgia in 2007 or 8, and then 2014 this came, the issue of Ukrainian intervention in Ukraine. Crimea was captured, and then what you see recently 2 years back. So these are the reasons, these are the basis of what you call ideological basis of Russian state and politics today.
How popular or well supported is the Putin regime in Russia? Because when the Russia-Ukraine war started, the Western media was showing us scenes of Russian citizens protesting. But 2 years down the line, all that opposition seems to have vanished. So how do Russian citizens perceive Putin regime? And do you think the war took a hit? Because of the war, the popularity did suffer some decline?
Putin is very popular, and number of reasons, but in my view, the first reason is Tina factor. There is no alternative factor, because the system has worked in a way in the last 20 years or so that it has not allowed this alternative parties or alternative politics to emerge in Russia. Because of that, Putin kind of controls, as I said, most of the institutions. Be it political party, be it media, civil society, the NGOs, etc., they cannot work without permission. And if there is a funding from outside, so they are considered as alien and foreign agents. So because of that, Putin is still the only prominent figure in Russia today. Putin does not have any challenger in terms of political parties, in terms of civil society institutions. Most of the critiques that you see of Putin, they are settled in the Western countries. They're coming from the West. And also because of the continuous some kind of tension between the West and Russia, Putin has mobilized Russian population against the West. And the message that Putin has tried to send to his people that you need a strong leader, You need a stable polity and you need a strong economy to counter the West. Otherwise, Russia will not survive. He has tried to convey that Russia will go down the path which Soviet Union went, which basically meant disintegration. So to avoid that, you have to have a very strong nationalistic kind of policy. So orthodoxy, Christianity, orthodoxy, nationalism. So these are the basis of through which Putin has retains his legitimacy. In terms of survey, Putin is still very popular. Even today, roughly 70% of the people they support Putin. So maybe more also. The two reasons why at the moment they are supporting Putin, one is because Russia is in advantageous position vis-a-vis Ukraine war. And as you know that it has captured territory, Donetsk, Luhansk, etc. It has captured Divka recently, and now is moving further by capturing a few villages. So Putin, in terms of that, people started believing that Putin is a kind of important leader for Russia, and also because of economy, because the Russian economy has not gone down despite sanctions, very maximum sanctions from the West. So he retains his legitimacy, and in my view, Tina factor and stability in economy, these are the reasons why Putin is still very popular today. There is no challenger at all.
So while Putin controls most of the institutions in Russia, surely one man cannot run the whole country. What are the other organs of the government of Russia that we do not get to hear so much about?
Russia has everything that a liberal democracy has, in terms of political parties, in terms of media, in terms of civil society, in terms of multiple political parties which do have some support in different parts of Russia. It's also very strong federalism. So it has all the facets of, or I might use the term facade of democracy, liberal democracy. But when you do not allow the critical space to emerge intellectually or in terms of political parties or civil society or media, then it becomes very difficult for any alternative to emerge. So how long Putin will rule? He is already 72, as you said. He has modified Russian constitution. Initially, Russian constitution, president could be for 2 terms, but yet he modified again. And then he has kind of brought a provision that where he can be for a lifetime. Although Russian politics is very fragile, that is not a reality. But again, Putin, there is no replacement of Putin at this moment. The way the successor is chosen in Russia, so Putin was also not a very popular leader when he became prime minister and later president. He was selected by Yeltsin. So similarly, what I believe that after some time, he'll pick up one of the younger person, he'll put him as president, and then the entire institutional structure will mobilize with that person. So that's the likely successor, but we don't know when.
So, when the Russia-Ukraine war was underway, we saw a rebellion being staged by the Wagner group, whose leader later died in a plane crash. We've also recently learned that the main opposition critic, Alexei Navalny, he died in prison. Do this cycle of death point towards challenges to the Putin regime or the fault lines in the Russian polity?
This is very interesting, Heena, that even today in a modern country, you see the cases of deaths of opposition leaders through poisoning, through accidents, through shooting. These are the things that we used to hear in the medieval period. But poisoning through Novichok, that's nuclear agent, etc. So these are pretty common, and there are a number of examples through which many of the leaders or human rights activists or political opposition leaders, so they have been kind of eliminated from the system. So that in a way, so that is a kind of that is a way to try to send a message to the opposition party and the leaders that you cannot actually be a critic and remain very safely in Russia. So that goes against the legitimacy of the state and also the leader. But in my view, today, Prigozhin, you referred to the case of Prigozhin. Prigozhin was emerging as a second most populous leader in Russia after Putin because of the war. In Bakhmut, in Ukraine, the Bakhmut was captured because of the Wagner army. So Putin, this Prigozhin became a threat. He was more popular than the defense minister Shoigu. So the conflict was taking place between Shoigu, the defense ministry, and Prigozhin. And Prigozhin became much more popular compared to the defense minister. And in a way, he was emerging as a threat because he was a person who was not scared by anybody except probably Putin. He had the confidence of Putin without any doubt. He was from St. Petersburg, and most of the contacts that he had were the security contacts or the food supply contacts that came through Putin's administration from St. Petersburg. But he became a challenge, and he was also eliminated. Not only him, but the entire leadership of the rebellious leadership who could have posed a challenge after the war, so they were eliminated in the plane crash that you heard. These are the methods through which Russia there are charges of eliminating through these this extrajudicial killings, what you call it, and in my view that is very apolitical, that goes against the state, that also goes against the leadership.
As we discussed a little while back, Putin is now 72 years old. Are there questions in Russia about what after Putin?
Russia is a very different state here. Russia is an authoritarian state, and they do not proclaim to be democracy. So if you say that Russia is not a democracy, it's not a kind of insult to them. So it's an authoritarian state where they think that liberal democracy is not the model for Russia, and they're not moving in the direction of liberal democracy in any case. But yes, people do think about this. What is the alternative? But as I said, that in Russia, the opposition does not emerge necessarily through some kind of electoral process, electoral churning that you see in democracies. Many cases, as I said, that Putin himself was chosen by Yeltsin. So similarly, the alternative will emerge, but alternative will emerge not through some opposition party or through some judicial or electoral process. It ultimately Putin or the ruling party will decide that who should rule Russia. They will appoint somebody, and then so that's how Russian succession system works. So at the moment, I don't see any alternative. Medvedev was president for 5-6 years, but after that, he was considered to be too liberal to run the government. And in my view, there are other people in the Putin administration who do kind of wield some influence in Russia. But at the moment, we don't know who could be the alternative.
What is the status of Russia-India relationships? Do you think that there was a little decline in the, in the relationship because of the Russia-Ukraine war, and our Prime Minister proclaimed that this is not the age for wars, right? And do you think there will be a resurgence in ties once Putin is re-elected, or we will see that a new long term is going to be inaugurated by him?
Yes, there are some instances through which it kind of gives an impression that the status has declined. The India-Russia ties they have gone down. There are two instances. Let me tell you. One is that the annual summit meeting which takes place between India and Russia. 1 year Putin will come to Delhi, and another year Prime Minister Modi or whoever is the Prime Minister will go to Russia, and that has worked very well for the last 23 years. This is started in 2000. Last two years, that is not happening. Foreign Minister of India went to Russia recently, but it was at the summit level meeting where Prime Minister should have gone. The second, Putin also didn't come for the G20, and there were political reasons for that why he didn't come for the G20 meeting. So there are some indications, but also there are some upswings, the positive sides of the relationship. For instance, Russia-India trade has gone up. Primarily because of the energy issue. We have started importing a lot of energy from Russia. Roughly 56 to 60 billion import has taken place in the last 1.5 years. So that is one side, but in my view, Russia is very, very important for India, and India is also important for us. It's not just one way, but two-way process. I'll just briefly tell you that what are the reasons why Russia is important. One, that China factor. We are always trying to balance China. We are the continental power. Our threats are coming from the continent, Pakistan and China. So in that case, we cannot allow Russia to go completely with China and become the subordinate partner of China. So if you do not want that to happen, then you'll have to have very good ties with Russia. So that's number one. And number two, India does not completely trust the West. the Western country. There is always a fear of abandonment and fear of entrapment. What is abandonment? That you fear that what if we go completely with the West, and if West does not come to your rescue? And we have instances of Kashmir, Bangladesh crisis, etc., when the West was not with India. In contrast, Russia always supported India. So because of that historical factor and also the fear of abandonment, we do not go completely with the West. So we always try to maintain a policy, what we call multi-alignment. Multi-alignment means that based on our national interest, we'll have relationship with the Western countries, with Russia, and possibly with China also. So that kind of policy we are pursuing. In the third factor is that India's dependence on import of defense products from Russia. So even today, 60% of the defense purchases are from Russia. And once you have a defense, like say, if you buy Sukhoi, for instance, then Sukhoi you are buying for 20 years. So in a way, you have to have that relationship for the next 20 years. That dependence continues. Recently, we bought S-400. Jointly, we are producing BrahMos missile, etc. So because of these reasons, Russia will remain important. But there are a few concerns about Russia. One is that we do not want Russia to be defeated in the war with the West, because Russia's demise is not in the interest of India, at least from the Indian state perspective. We are also concerned that Russia should not become a junior partner or subordinate ally of China, because that would not be in the interest of India. We do not want Russia to supply weapons to Pakistan for that matter. We also are worried that if the war continues, this Russia-Ukraine war, so then the price of energy will go up, the price of this fertilizer will go up, and which is not in the interest of farmers of India. So because of these are the concerns that we are trying to deal with. But let me tell you that at the moment, Russia's relation with India is strong. And just a few days back, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, in an interview with the German newspaper, Handelsblatt is the name of the German economic newspaper, he said that Russia has never hurt the interest of India. And in comparison to, he said that as we cannot expect Europe to have a similar view about China, India's view of China, so you should not expect India to have European view of Russia. So European Union and China, they have strong economic ties, and they are having ties despite the fact that India is fighting with China. India has war with China. So India cannot ask Europe not to have trade, not to have other ties with China. So similarly, European countries should not dictate the terms on India on what kind of relationship it wants to pursue with Russia or with other country. So.
Thank you for joining us today, sir, and thank you for this very enlightening discussion.
Thank you for having me here. It was lovely meeting all of you.